USC has the number one ranked recruiting class. Don't, I repeat, don't sleep on Miami.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petiti had some comments on the playoff. I didn't like most of them. Surprise, surprise. And there's a surprising team in Los Angeles on the trail. Nice little recruiting sandwich on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Alex Dono, Locked On Canes, is here live from Italy. Well, live-ish from Italy, by the way, and about as live as you can get when recording podcast segments. But USC has been the strongest buzz team in the country on the recruiting trail for 2026, Dono, because the volume, the caliber of players, they deserve to be the number one ranked class in America right now, but not far behind with only 19 commits as we record this segment. The Miami Hurricanes, do you think they could legitimately push for the number one class?
You know, there are ebbs and flows in this, and about a week ago, maybe even 5 days before we're having this conversation, with the way Miami finished the month of June, where final week of June, they went on a run of 6 verbal commits in 7 days. You saw the class starting to surge closer to the top 5. I would have said, hey, I think Miami really is in play for the number one class. Things are not trending as great with some of Miami's top targets in the meantime. And again, I'm very confident, Spencer. I think Miami's going to finish a top 10 class, which they've done 3 out of the past 4 recruiting cycles, or I guess 2 out of the past 3 recruiting cycles. They were just outside the top 10 this past year, but close to it for the class of 2024, I think, was just
5.
outside the 2025.
4 or 5. They all blend together at some point, don't they?
They all run together. But the bottom line is, and obviously when Miami this cycle has been able to land a player like Jackson Cantwell, who's the top recruit in the country, that's going to put you in position to potentially land the number one class in America. I thought in part of the run that Miami had last week, flipping one of the top receivers in the class, Vance Spafford, from his commitment to Georgia was massive. But in the meantime, Spencer, there are certain other players, Miami targets, that I think they would have to land in order to finish with potentially the number one class in the country. And things aren't necessarily trending so well with some of those. A couple weeks ago, I would have told you, and maybe I will tell you this again, but again, ebbs and flows to this stuff, that Miami was the team to beat for top interior offensive lineman remaining in this class, Breck Colajay out of IMG Academy in Florida. There's been a lot of recent buzz for Georgia. You notice Miami and Georgia going head-to-head for a lot of players in this class, which has been fun to follow. Speaking of Georgia recently landed one of Miami's top targets in defensive tackle James Johnson, who's a 4-star, borderline 5-star on some of the services. James Johnson was the type of player Miami needs to be landing if they're going to finish with the number one class. They lost him to Georgia. Miami, of course, will keep recruiting Johnson till National Signing Day. He now plays. He's not from South Florida, but he's moved to South Florida. He plays at Miami Northwestern, which is an important school for Miami recruiting. There's a top receiver who plays in Miami at Northwestern, Calvin Russell. That's the type of player you need to land. The Calvin Russell seems like that young man wants to play anywhere but Miami, which is interesting because his mother is in the Sports Hall of Fame. She played basketball at Miami back when I was in school, which is
blazing his own path. Dono, I think he just wants to blaze his own path. That's one they're fighting Syracuse for, right?
Well, not even so much, because Calvin Russell put out a top 3, and I think he might be trolling a little bit because he put out a top 3. And I'm not saying all these schools shouldn't be in it. Like Michigan was in his top 3, who's been recruiting really hard. Oregon in the top 3, and Florida State. And even I had a conversation with Brian Smith from Locked On Seminoles, but he was even surprised that Calvin Russell put Florida State in his top 3. He excluded LSU, who I personally have seen as the Calvin Russell frontrunner for about the past month and a half. He excluded them. He excluded Miami. He excluded Syracuse, who has been a team that's recruited Calvin Russell really hard. But I'm not feeling great about Miami landing him. It'd be tough to have a number one class without him. Now, there is another top player in the class that Miami might still be trending for that could help them get to number one, and that is Chaminade Madonna. That's another South Florida high school. Chaminade Madonna running back Derek Cooper, who's a 5-star or 4-star in some places, who's a top player. But there are other programs, including Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas, that are recruiting Derek Cooper really hard, as is Miami. Cooper actually was scheduled to make a July 12th verbal commitment. He has come out and postponed it indefinitely. So that may not be good news, bad. It may be completely, inconsequential to Miami's chances. But if I was to view Derek Cooper as a Miami lean, him postponing the verbal commitment may not be a good thing because it allows other schools to get in there. So long and the short of it is, it's going to be difficult. I think Miami will have a top 10 class again, but to get to number one, you've got to close Derek Cooper. You've got to close one of Calvin Russell, or top receiver Tristan Keys is someone Miami has really been recruiting hard. He's committed to LSU, but Miami, Tennessee, and Texas A&M are among schools that are trying to flip Tristan Keys. And an interesting note on him is he recently signed a massive NIL deal with Adidas. LSU, where he's committed, is not an Adidas school. Now, it's not like he's not allowed to play at a Nike school, but if he's going to maximize his NIL potential, flipping to an Adidas school would be beneficial for him. And the schools that I mentioned, Tennessee, A&M, and Miami, are all three-stripe schools, so there is a possibility there. But you'd have to land either him or Calvin Russell, along with Derek Cooper. Probably would have to land Brett Koleje, and you would have to land a top defensive lineman the rest of the way, whether it be trying to flip James Johnson from Georgia or trying to land 5-star defensive tackle Bryce Perry Wright, who seems like a Clemson lean right now. I think Miami's got to hit a lot of home runs here. The path to the number one class is not easy. I think they can get close to it, but I think it's really slim. Miami closes out with the top class in the nation.
Yeah, it was just outside the top 10 at number 14 in the country in 2025. The other classes with Mario Cristobal have been inside the top 10. Does that lessen the pressure in your view to accomplish something like that? Because it's not as if, that's necessarily a contract clause for Mario Cristobal. You have to have a number one class in the country by, by year 5 or whatever it would be as he goes into year 4. But it is something that I think when he got hired, I'm sure there are plenty of people, yourself included, thought about, but this guy's recruiting chops and you're coming to Miami. Kind of seems like it's possible one day, is it not?
It is, but it's also a double-edged sword, because if you keep pulling in top 10 recruiting classes and you don't finish a season in the top 10, right, at a certain point, there are other questions that come out with that. But I also, there are a number of reasons why. And listen, I'm not saying I don't follow recruiting rankings, because I 1000% do. Like, they are, as much as people complain about the 24/7s and the on-3s and the rivals, like, they're such a valuable tool, because it's impossible for us to scout every player and come up with our own rankings.
Or most players, quite frankly.
Yeah, true. But so it's not a perfect system, but it's a good system. But part of the imperfection of it is, you've got to have development. And, I know Miami's player development has not been impeccable over the years. They've obviously done a good job with certain players. I think Cristobal's got a good mix of assistant coaches now to help develop some of these guys. Jason Taylor has been doing a really good job with the defensive line for the last couple of years, and Alex Mirabal does a great job with the offensive line. But development is a big part of it, and also recruiting to fit your needs and your culture. Because for one thing, Miami may not be perfect landing players from certain positions, but they've been darn near perfect landing offensive linemen and edge rushers, especially in recent years. And if you can dominate the line of scrimmage, that's going to cover up some of your other warts. So, I do think Cristobal has done an incredible job in overall recruiting, but also recruiting at the line of scrimmage, because, your floor is going to get really high if you're big uglies up front are winning all of their battles. So I think that's an area where Miami's done a really good job.
Yeah, and if you have the number one pick in the NFL draft at quarterback, if you do that too, I don't know what to tell you. That takes care of a lot of things. Alex Donna takes care of everything you know for Miami over at Locked On Canes. Tony Petiti's trying to take care of the playoff as commissioner of the Big Ten. So many thoughts on his recent comments. First, this episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier with Monarch Money? It can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth, which is what you should want to be doing here. Have you had that one financial goal that you haven't been able to reach and have wanted to for a long time? Monarch can help you get there. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Check them out at monarchmoney.com. So recently, Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petiti spoke on the Joel Klatt show about the college football playoff and all sorts of stuff. It's a good listen. I do recommend checking it out. I think there is definitely, with both of those guys, an element of the editorialized, kind of corporatized, semi-generic responses. But if you listen through the weeds, as I do when I listen to an interview 2 or 3 times, certain things stand out. Number one thing that stood out, Tony Petiti said, oh, I'm so shocked at this one, guys. So shocked. 12 teams is not enough. Oh, wow. You look at what, he said something to the effect of, look at what other sports leagues have. Oh, gosh. I have nothing against Tony Petiti personally. He's clearly good at his job. The Big Ten is one of the 2 strongest leagues in the country, and they've won back-to-back national championships. I mean, dude's doing something right. I know it's not all on him, but he's pretty good at his job. Pretty good. 12 is not enough. You've got to go to 16. Now, he does rationalize the justification by saying we feel like, the Big Ten should get 4 automatic berths in a 16-team format because we're playing 9 conference games, and he wants that to be equal across the board. Okay. All right, Tony, now you and I agree. But the 12 is not enough because look at what the other ones do. Look at other sports and how many teams they let in. I have been sounding the alarm bell on this particular narrative or an adjacent formula of it for quite a long time. Because what I have long said when people ask me, how big do you think the college football playoff will go? Oh, we'll get to 24 teams. Why do you say that? Because somebody or a lot of somebodies in positions of power, like Tony Petiti perhaps, are going to look at what exists in FCS college football, which is different than FBS college football for a lot of ways. And I'm someone who is a part of FCS college football. I love it. It's great. Is the playoff field overly expansive? Perhaps. Does it work for FCS football? It does. It absolutely does. Someone is going to look at the FCS, and this has already happened before. I mean, Mike Leach was pointing this out a long time ago. Well, they've got a playoff at the FCS ranks. Okay, that doesn't mean it should happen at FBS football, but all right, sure. I guess they do have that. They're going to look at it and go, hey, look, they have 24 teams. They put 24 teams in the playoff, and we're just going to continue to whittle down the importance and value of the college football regular season, which has long been the strongest component of the whole sport. The urgency week to week is greater in college football than it is in any other sport. There is not one that compares. The closest comparison is the NFL. Let me ask you this. Can you think of the 5 best, most memorable regular season NFL games from last year? I say this rhetorically, of course, because I'm the only one talking on the show, as someone who watches the NFL every week, plays fantasy football, has an NFL team, go Seahawks. I love the NFL. Do not get me misconstrued. I can't tell you, I mean, I think there was a Bills-Chiefs game. Yeah, one of those stands out. Someone else has to jog my memory for that. If you say what were the best regular season games of last year, well, Oregon, Ohio State is really high on the list. Alabama and Georgia is always, really high on the list. Those games are not just games played over the course of a season. Those games are events. Those games are cinema. They are theater that you have to go and see as it's happening and experience it, even if you're not in person, which most people, of course, are not. You've got to experience that game live. I love Sunday Night Football. When I hear that music come on NBC and the opening rolls and Mike Tirico, phenomenal play-by-play guy, comes on with Chris Collinsworth, I love it. It is nostalgic, it is exciting, it is fun, it is riveting. When I watch the game, there is not even a shred of the type of urgency that exists for a college football regular season game, like Alabama, Georgia, like Texas, Georgia. I mean, keep going down the list of all the great games and all the impactful ones and how important they were. No singular Sunday Night Football game matches or rises to the level of this is the most important thing happening in the sport is what you get in college football. And so when you keep expanding the playoff, you take that away. Because something else that Petiti and Klatt talked about extensively was we want to put more good games out there. We want there to be quality matchups like Texas, Ohio State this year. Everyone's going to watch that. It's going to get a big rating. Yes, it will. Fact check, true. I am on board with that. Here's the problem. If you continue to go out there, as many folks are, to expand the playoff and create automatic qualifiers within the conference instead of what I've lobbied for, if we are going to go to 16 teams, to keep the urgency on the non-conference high-profile matchups and to incentivize them to be played, you go to 5+11 and you put it in the committee's hands. You create the unknown factor and everyone wants to cover their own rear ends as best they can so that they can allow themselves to be in the best possible position to get selected for the college football playoff. When you have defined criteria, specifically ones rooted in conference play, you can lose a non-conference game and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And Petiti even laid it out. He kind of accidentally made the point I'm making here, where he said, well, you go out and lose a non-conference game, but you could still go 7-2 in conference play and make this play-in weekend that we're talking about. So what you're telling me is that non-conference game that happens in the first few weeks of the season that we all love, like Oklahoma playing Michigan or Texas playing Ohio State, or you keep going down the list, Clemson playing LSU, they're just not going to matter because, you lose the game. Okay. Well, we just got to go win a bunch of games in our conference now. You're still going to have more urgency than you have in the NFL, but you weaken it little by little. The 12-team playoff was the first way in which we got to that point, and this expansion of the playoff would just continue to exacerbate that. And they're saying, we want to have good games. Yeah, but if the games don't mean anything, then you're not actually accomplishing a whole heck of a lot. You're just putting two big brands on television. People are going to watch because of course we are, but it's not going to feel the same. We have no other option. We have no other outlet. It's so ingrained into our routines as college football fans that we are not going to just fail to watch Notre Dame and Texas, hypothetically, or Clemson and Notre Dame, LSU. Everything. I'm so wired about this stuff, and I get so heated when people talk about we want to have better non-conference games. Yeah, but they're not going to mean anything. If all you have to do is succeed in your conference slate, what's the incentive for people to get? It would just be a casual, this might affect the seeding one day, but it doesn't actually affect access to the playoff itself. That is where my objection comes in. And all these proposals about 4-4, 2-2, 1-3, 4-4, 2.5, and all this stuff, the defined criteria make it more about the conference games. And yeah, those games are still going to be fun and exciting and meaningful. And you do add it to that. But now the college football season doesn't actually start until the first month comes to a close. It doesn't start until October or the end of September when league play actually begins in earnest. That's when games start to matter. And that is something I really, really want to avoid. All wound up about that stuff. It just annoys me. Also, it is, Clemson, Notre Dame has got the 12-year series. That's a great example of what I'm talking about. What does that game mean? It means something for Notre Dame. But what does that game mean for Clemson? If all they have to do is, they just got to go 7-2 in their conference slate. And regardless of what, they could go 1-2 in their non-conference, make the playoff automatically because they go 7-2 in the ACC. Is that a world you want to live in? It's not a world I want to live in. UCLA wants to live in a world where they are better at something and they're going in the right direction. Do you know about that school in Los Angeles that recruits football players and is doing so at an elite level and isn't USC? That's right. UCLA is making waves. Zach Anderson-Yaxheimer of Locked On UCLA is here to discuss because, Zach, you look up and we are into the month of July and the Bruins have a top 20, not just top 25, top 20 knocking on the door. They're like one player away potentially from having a top 15 class nationally. That hasn't been seen round these parts in a long time for the boys in baby blue. What is DeShaun Foster doing right at the moment?
Well, the big thing, Spencer, UCLA was in the top 10 for a week there before a couple of decommits. They were in the top 15, depending on the outlets or models you look at. But yes, mostly just outside the top 15. The big thing is UCLA has become a national recruiting threat. I won't say powerhouse. I think that's a little disrespectful. But they have gone out and made some noise in the state of Florida. 4 commits, namely 2 big offensive line commits, a couple of underrated receivers. And UCLA has bridged the gap between what the rest of the country is doing to what they just didn't do under Chip Kelly, which is, let's go recruit in our backyard, and let's go across the pond or go anywhere and find talent, which is not as hard as it looks when you live in LA.
Are you a Moneyball guy?
For my fantasy baseball team, yes. For my Major League Baseball team, no.
I was just referring to the movie. It's not that hard, Scott. Tell him, Wash. Anyway, so the Bruins are in a position that they have to hold on to. It's not. I'm not one of those people that says, nothing matters until December. No, you build the bulk of your recruiting classes from May to August. That is when I'd say probably 75 to 80% of your commitments and maybe even a higher percentage of your high-profile commitments wind up choosing your school. So I think that we are this late in the cycle. This is the first time we've talked about the Bruins recruiting efforts, that we are this late in the cycle and they're recruiting this well is a really good sign going into year 2. And I think you have to start to snowball positive momentum the way they did at the end of last season. Because I don't think DeShaun Foster is on a hot seat after missing a bowl game in year 1. I don't think anybody could have expected him to make a bowl game with the situation he was inheriting. But eventually, you want to start seeing recruiting wins, right? Like you have to start to stack these things up. Does this feel like they're starting to really build sustainable momentum to you?
Yeah, I mean, UCLA even lost Stacey Ford to Oklahoma, and he was a key part of the recruiting overhaul on the staff, and then completely changing the entire, day-to-day football coaching staff, and they're starting to win all these battles. Initially, last summer, I thought the hope for DeShaun Foster was get in the conversation. This year is to win some of those battles, and then I think the next year, when you're looking for the 26s or heading in more to the 27s in next summer, if we're projecting that far, you got to win a battle for a high-ranked 4-star or a 5-star at some point. When you win one of those battles, underrated battle where you come out. But what UCLA's done from where they were at the end of the Chip Kelly era to now, it's a remarkable growth. And just last month alone, from beginning of May into the end of June, UCLA jumped in a month overall, recruiting-wise, that I've never seen a 3 to 4 week stretch that DeShaun Foster's put in quite a while at UCLA.
Where do you think the ceiling is for this class, and what do you think is a successful recruiting cycle once it's all said and done?
I mean, I'm greedy. I saw UCLA was so close to getting to a top 10 class, but after a couple of decommits, the Pula twins decommitted, There was a local high school. There's a local quarterback from Downey High School, Oscar Rios. He just chose Arizona over UCLA. And I think part of that came with Nico coming to UCLA and his brother Madden coming to UCLA. That hurt the Bruins' chances to get a 26 quarterback like an Oscar Rios, who would have loved to go to UCLA and probably in any other circumstances would have chosen the Bruins, except not for a succession plan with the brothers in place. I think the overall ceiling for UCLA is at some point more consistent top 15, top 10 classes. With what happens, leading up to this, I think UCLA being in the top 20 for the class of 26 would be a major success considering where they started. But I think building into the top 15 and gradually working towards in and outside the top 10 is where DeShaun Foster should want to live with, the idea of being in LA and Big Ten media opportunities and just the ability to recruit nationally. I think that's where UCLA should want to. Maybe not top ranked overall, but top 10 is certainly where the Bruins should be sniffing every once in a while with where they are.
If you are unprepared for the question I'm about to ask you, I'm questioning your credentials as the host of Locked On UCLA. How much of this recruiting success is because Nico came to the Bruins?
DeShaun Foster wants the haters. He wanted the glitz. He wanted the glamour. But I think this is something that started even before Nico. It's just all the focus was to get somebody. When Nico was available, they got him. And after all that died down, then UCLA pivoted towards a 26 class, the class of 2026, where, wait, why have they get any recruits in this class? All of a sudden, they came. The success is clear. The opportunities are there. And everybody's like, wait a minute. You saw what they did in the transfer portal in this early part of the spring 2025. There are good players coming in, and that's starting to build. But this has just been a relationship and a culture built from DeShaun Foster that's been more than a few months in the making. That Nico helps, but I think this is even bigger than just Nico.
I saw the other day that Nico's going to be UCLA's Big Ten representative, or one of the players that Coach Foster brings to media days in Las Vegas in July. I am planning to be down there. Fingers crossed that it all works out. I don't know that there's going to be a singular player in the Big Ten, Zach, that has more reporting attention on him when he breaks off into those individual sessions at media days to field questions from people. I mean, I was at Big Ten media days last year in Indianapolis, and when this is not a shot how it's going to come off. This is just report. I could give another example. It's just the one that popped into my head. Jed Fish was answering questions in his first year as the head coach at Washington from about 3 reporters maybe in his individual session. At the same time across the way, Sharon Moore, Michigan's head coach, is over there. I mean, flocks. Dozens of people trying to get a question in, trying to get a soundbite, a clip, anything like that. When the players come available at Vegas this year, I imagine Nico is just going to be in the middle of the media frenzy. I think it's great that he's going. I applaud UCLA and Nico for not trying to hide from it. He's going to get asked a lot of questions. I'm excited for that personally. What do you make of it?
I'm super excited of it. The thing is, we sometimes, is he going to say something of substance? What's more likely? Is DeShaun Foster going to have a killer opening press conference? Is that more likely? Or is Nico going to say something of substance that's going to change all the haters' minds about how he left Tennessee? What's more likely? DeShaun Foster, we're in LA. What's more likely in that one?
Oh. I mean, Nico is not historically a loquacious guy.
Now there's DeShaun Foster, so you're really
no, he's not. I would lean towards DeShaun Foster giving an absolute banger of a speech being more likely because of how last year's went. I'd be down for either one to happen. I don't know that either are super likely, but that feels kind of like a coin flip to me. Because maybe
I feel like
Nico,
DeShaun Foster, I think he had a shirt made that said "We're from LA," like making fun of himself.
Yeah, he
After
did.
that, I think he should wear that.
Great.
He shouldn't go. So he should wear that. Walk up, smile, just kind of have Nico in the background, just look at him and be like, "That's the statement I made," and just walk off. That's all he needs to do. My actions speak louder than my words.
That sounds like a great plan. Should I get down there and ask Nico what he thinks of the bet that I have with UCLA fans and the jersey and where he needs to get to? Should I put that into his head?
I think you should absolutely do that. Be like, I'm about to buy your jersey, Nico. You know,
like, hey, if you win 7 or more games, I have to spend my own money to buy your jersey and rock it on my show for an entire week. So just keep that in mind. And then if the Bruins win 8 games, you'll have me to thank, of course, because I will have fueled the entire ordeal. Zach Anderson, Yoxheimer, Locked On UCLA. Great as always, my man. I appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.